The year is 2025, and the Baylor Bears are crushing SEC powerhouses on the recruiting trail. How did we get here?
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by Game Time, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Happy Bastille Day to you, July the 14th. I'm your host, Cam Stuart, ESPN Central Texas. We're talking recruiting throughout this episode and a lot throughout this week because the Baylor Bears are on a heater, the likes of which we may have never seen from this program. The couple of big-time prospects they went out and got in this past week. We will talk about that and then how this continues, who Baylor is looking at next, and who is the secret behind this? What is the secret sauce? That's kind of the question that I want to tackle today in a little bit in all three segments. How did we get here? How does Baylor get to this point where they are beating some SEC powerhouses for some of the best players in America? All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. Because my word, this has come kind of out of nowhere. The Baylor Bears. I said it last month when some people were starting to question the recruiting class a little bit, obviously coming off a great year last year, and then seeing the numbers, they're not quite happening right now. And they lost a couple right after the official visits weekend. I say, hey, look, let's reassess at the end of July. And last week, the Baylor Bears were barely inside the top 50 recruiting class in the entire country, 49th. Right now, as you look on July the 14th, that number is 22. They're a top 25 recruiting class in the country right now. That's the kind of thing we haven't seen in a decade here at Baylor. As great as it was last year, they were just inside the top 40. Now they're inside the top 25. And if you look at the Big 12 list, right there at number 2 is Baylor. So I saw this sentiment shared on social media quite a bit this last weekend, and I think it bears repeating here. Texas Tech went out there, spends all that money. They got a 5-star recruit. They're paying him a couple $1 million. They are laying down millions and millions of dollars for these high school players just to be behind Baylor in the recruiting rankings in the Big 12. All that millions and millions of oil money going to these high school kids. And Dallas Baker and Keenan Hall are out there for Baylor saying, hey, kid, you could be a part of this. Texting them every day, Bible verses. How's your mom doing? How's school? And then when it comes to football, okay, here's where we see you, here, here, and here, and you can help us build something. And they say, yeah, I'll go there. And that's how we've gotten to this point. In a short answer, we'll get into the long answer throughout this whole video here, this whole podcast episode. The bottom line is right now they're blowing everybody out of the water. 6 4-star commits. That's twice as many as the next Big 12 school. 6 4-stars. And the highest average rating of any recruit for any team in the Big 12. And they're top 20 in the nation in that category. But of course, the talk of the weekend, Jamarion Carlton on Thursday, Jordan Clay on Friday. Couple of old Big 12 foes, now SEC powers, because, they needed to be in the SEC, Texas and Oklahoma. The Big 12 was small potatoes for them. They needed to move up. They couldn't bring themselves down by playing schools like Baylor and Texas Tech every year. And now they can't even out-recruit them. Is that not crazy? Jamarion Carlton was high on the list for Texas fans and a priority for Texas coaches. Jordan Clay, the wide receiver from San Antonio Madison, same thing for Oklahoma. Again, the greatest hits, right? They didn't even want them. They didn't even want these guys. They've never wanted a recruit ever that they didn't get. Whatever you're going to hear from them. But the bottom line is both those guys were priorities for those schools. For Jamarion Carlton for Texas, Jordan Clay for Oklahoma, and Dave Aranda swooped in and got them to come to Baylor. And the powers that be in the SEC and in those programs in particular are thinking, how in the world did this happen? And I've got to once again take a moment to appreciate what Dave Aranda is doing here. I wanted him fired at the end of the 2023 season. I made that pretty clear on this show. And there were points last year where I said, this is not it. It's not working. But before the final game of 2023, knowing that game was fugazi, right? Dave Aranda goes into Mac Rhodes' office with his binders and says, here's how we're going to do it. Okay, we need some financial commitment. Yes, absolutely. And I'm not going to sit here and say Baylor's selling a dream without paying players. Of course they're doing that. Everyone's doing that. But what Dave Aranda said was, we've got to get better in the portal. They did that. We've got to get better recruiting. I got to go out and get some coaches who are good at recruiting. And that needs to improve over the next 2 or 3 cycles. And he has delivered that. And that does mean something for a coach's job security. You got to go out there and you got to win some football games. Dave Aranda did that last year. If this team falls flat and they go 6-6, that's still a major issue for the here and now. But the future of this program is as bright as it has been in a while. Probably since Art Briles was here. I know there were some days certainly of brightness with Matt Rule. And certainly in some of the early days of Dave Aranda, 2021, we're sitting there thinking this is great. This is dreamland. But this right now is the best I've felt about Baylor football's future in about a decade. Just the talent they've got coming in. And the fact that you're doing this off the back of a 3-9 season and an 8-4 season. You didn't need to go out and win a Big 12 championship to get these kids in the door. So who's to say what it's going to look like when you do start doing that? It's not unlike Baylor basketball. They didn't win a Big 12 championship until 2021. And Scott Drew was still getting huge recruiting coups and getting transfers in here, back when that was a tough thing to do. And they started getting the best talent in the country. Baylor's doing that in football right now. It's incredible. And it's the most overused word in the English language, but dare I say, it's unbelievable. What is happening? If I told you that Dave Aranda was going to make that pitch at the end of 2023 as the team fell to 3-9 and gave up 2 touchdowns the last, 2.5 minutes of that game against West Virginia to fall to 3-9. And after their recruiting the last couple of seasons, even after a Sugar Bowl win and a Big 12 championship win, and I told you, just wait. You're going to get some big-time recruits next year. And then the year after that, you're going to have a top 25 recruiting class. You're going to run the Big 12 when it comes to recruiting. I'd say you were crazy. And looking at where they are right now in second place in the Big 12, they're sandwiched with BYU and Texas Tech. The 2 schools that are unequivocally the most flushed with cash, with the most monetary financial resources of any schools in this entire conference. Baylor's right there. Baylor's right there with them. You're taking the 2 best financially secure programs in BYU and Texas Tech, and right in the middle there is one of the least secure. Baylor, small, private, Baptist school, is right there with the big boys of this conference. And oh yeah, they're picking off recruits from Texas and Oklahoma, the big boys of this entire sport and this region. Dave Aranda's delivering, y'all. And he ain't done yet. Let's go and look at where they're going next and how they can possibly keep this train rolling and continue to piss off some of the great blue bloods of college football. Let's talk about it next on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. Look, we've all been there. You log on early, you wait forever for those concert tickets to go on sale, those big game tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot to a show or a game you've just been dying to see. That's not going to be the case with Game Time. Okay, I've got my beloved Red Sox, winners of 10 in a row, coming to Wrigley next weekend, right in my own backyard. And I'm going because of Game Time. Okay, and I won't even think about buying tickets to something until we get closer to the actual event, because Game Time always comes through for me. Okay, the price you see on the app, the price you pay, none of the hidden fees, and those prices go down the closer you get to Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets for concerts and shows and games with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. It has been one heck of a week on the recruiting trail for the Baylor Bears. Matt Mosley, my old partner on the Matt Mosley show, I'd call him my boss, let's say. His name was on the show. Matt Mosley has seen Baylor football for decades, man. He knows this program inside and out. And even he said after that Jordan Clay commitment, this is maybe the best week Baylor football recruiting has ever had. Something to that effect. And Jamarion Carlton, the 4-star defensive lineman from Temple, saying that's one of the biggest gets they've ever had. Certainly for Dave Aranda, it's got to be, right? And again, the fact that they picked those guys off from Texas's back pocket, from Oklahoma's back pocket, those schools that used to not even think about it. Just say, hey, you want to come play at Oklahoma? Okay, sure. Where do I sign up? Early days of NIL. Hey, you want to come play at Texas? We'll give you $1 million. Okay, where do I sign? Not the case anymore. Baylor's going in there, selling them on a dream, winging a prayer, literally, prayer, Bible verses, and Baylor's pulling it off. And the best part about it is they're not done yet, folks. They are not done yet. They're on one of the great runs they've ever been on in the recruiting trail, and here they are continuing to plug away. I told you last week, and the week before, actually, I did it both weeks. Next name is Jordan Clay. Next name is Jamarion Carlton. You got them both? Here's the next one, folks. Here's the Nostradamus, Cam Stuart, locked on Baylor. Next one to look out for, Davion Gross. Running back / receiver from Frisco, Lone Star, one of the best playmakers in the state of Texas in this class, baby. Like a top 10 athlete ranking in America and a top 80 recruit. Clay was top 100. Carlton was top 50. Davion Gross is the next one in that. The next one. Top 5 / athlete guy in the state of Texas. Top 10 in the country. Oh, but Cam, I'm looking at his 247 page. I don't know. A&M, Oklahoma, Florida. Conventional wisdom says Dave Aranda and the Baylor Bears have no chance. But it's 2025, baby. We're past conventional wisdom. After the last few weeks they've had, there's no one I doubt that the Baylor Bears can get. Like, nobody. They might be able to lure Arch Manning away at this point. And Davion Gross is the next guy on that list. And boy, you do yourselves a favor. After you make this your first listen today and every day, maybe you're pulling up to work, you've got some dead time in the day, go check out these Davion Gross highlights, man. You will be like, you'll get in the comment section and you'll say, Cam, I got to have him. And I always talk about the Gabe Brooks write-ups because I think he's the very best at following the recruiting trail, at least in terms of the written word. We love Brian Smith from Locked On the Portal, who is great at doing that. I'll be on with him later this week. Here's what Gabe Brooks writes up. Dynamic offensive weapon, experienced at running back and receiver, who could play either at the high major level. Full stop. There's just not many guys in America that you can say that about. Okay? That he's going to walk into a Power 4 program and potentially be able to play both. You know, the physicality of the running back position, the strength and size of the wide receiver position at a high major level. Can do either one of them. 200-meter champion in the state of Texas, 5A. All those Frisco schools, they only play 5A. Once they get to 5A level, they build another one. They've got like 20 in that town. Anyway, this past year, 1,400 yards from scrimmage for a damn good Lone Star team. 12 offensive touchdowns, 700 yards through the air, 16 yards per catch. Ran for about 700 as well, pretty evenly split. 7 touchdowns, 12 yards a carry. And if you're sitting there thinking, it's not good enough. Only 1,400 yards. Only 700 on the ground, you say? Only 700 through the air? I need to see more than that before I think he's a top 10 athlete in the country. Oh, do I have some news for you? 3 return touchdowns as well in major 5A high school football. This thing keeps going. This thing keeps going, man. And Baylor was pretty early on in the process for Davion Gross. And as I've said before, and I will say again, that is a huge part of Baylor's success model. Okay, they offered him on September 8th, 2023. Y'all, that's nuts. That's like 2 games into his sophomore year. They were offering him. Now, they weren't the first. Tech had offered him by then. TCU had offered him by then. Oklahoma State had offered him by then. Okay, so they weren't the first to do that, right? Those are schools that are big in the Metroplex. Obviously, Baylor has become that too. But, TCU right in the backyard. Oklahoma State pretty much exclusively recruits in the Metroplex. But they were still very early on in this process. It's only after the Baylors and the TCUs, but it's after Baylor that you get Tennessee, Notre Dame, A&M, Michigan, Oklahoma, some of these other schools that are hot on his trail come after Baylor. And that's a theme, man. I've talked about it before. Let's talk about it again. The kids who are coming here, these 4 or 5-star guys, of course, Davion Gross, 4-star guy, high 4-star, actually, could be a 5-star by the end of this thing. They say the same thing. Baylor was on me early, and they were on me often. Dallas Baker, Keenan Hall, these guys, they text me all the time from day one, and I know that I'm a priority there. And here's the best part about the Davion Gross thing. Baylor lost a recruiting battle this weekend. You didn't know it because Jordan Clay and Jamarion Carlton were such huge wins, but they lost Paris Melvin Jr., 4-star athlete, Houston area kid, committed to UH. That's a tough one. Lose a kid to an in-state, in-conference rival that you thought you had a good beat on. But that's gonna win Davion Gross for them. It is. Because second in 247, ahead of Oklahoma and Florida, is Houston. They're not going to be hard on the trail anymore. They got their 2026 Swiss Army knife. They got Paris Melvin Jr. They got a 5-star quarterback. Now it kind of gives the opportunity for Baylor to cook here. Like, again, they're nabbing big-time recruits because they make them priorities. Davion Gross is going to be their biggest priority for the rest of the summer right now. Like, without a doubt, man. And I don't know if we can say the same about Florida, Oklahoma, A&M. I don't even know if it's going to matter. I don't know that it's going to matter. When Baylor makes a guy a priority, an in-state kid, a Metroplex kid, when they make him a priority at this point in 2025, and I would say the same case about 2024 as well, when we get to that, it's game over for everyone else, man. And that includes Texas. That includes Oklahoma. That includes last year, Michigan, coming off a national championship when it came to Taz Williams. When Baylor is making a kid an absolute priority, that's when it's going to happen. And I'll get ahead of this as well. Oklahoma really needs this kid. So when Baylor lands the commitment over Oklahoma, don't listen to the message boards, man. Don't listen to that comment section. Oklahoma, you check it out right now before he makes that commitment. Take some receipts here. They really want this kid. And how could you not? Big time Swiss Army knife, one of the top uncommitted players in this class at this point. And a week ago, I would have said, Oklahoma's going to make him a real priority. I don't know. But now, anything could happen. And Baylor's put their 2 biggest guns on the case. And we're going to tell you the secret men behind this recruiting surge. And it's probably not even who you think. Let's talk about it next on Locked On Baylor. I'm a victim of this. Every time they get a big recruit, I say, Dave Aranda, Dave Aranda, Dave Aranda. He said he was going to do this, and he delivered in this. He's putting the SEC in a body bag. Okay, he's putting his recruiting rivals in the dirt. And that's true. Like, Dave Aranda is the head honcho of this whole organization, this whole program. And you don't get good recruits if you don't have a good head coach and a guy that they want to play for. But as most of you know, and I'm no fool in this, Dave Aranda's not out there typically going and doing most of the recruiting trips. Certainly, when there are guys that are priorities, he'll go. You know, he went to London Smith's basketball games. He'll do an in-home visit. Absolutely. But most of the boots on the ground work are done by some of your positional coaches. And there's a trio of guys that are out there for Baylor right now doing the Lord's football work, is what I call it. Keenan Hall, Dallas Baker, and Aaron Hunt, the GM of this program. When you tell the story of Dave Aranda turning this thing around, you have to include them. Okay? To use a Baylor-specific reference, Dave Aranda is the guy with the statue on campus that you take the picture with after you graduate. And then you notice there's two pillars on either side. They don't have guys on them, but they have guys' names. Dallas Baker, Keenan Hall. Those are the guys who need to have the pillars next to it. And I'd add a third one for Aaron Hunt too. And I know I was talking with someone who is inside this program, inside the coaching staff, who's not any one of these guys, saying this has just been, there's been so much momentum within these walls when Aaron Hunt became the general manager and kind of just focused on that. And that he's had the guns for hire with Dallas Baker and Keenan Hall. And these guys have just been working their butts off to get this thing done. And it's making results here. It's yielding results. And we talk about Baylor being second in that Big 12 recruiting ranking for the class of 2026. I'll break it down even further because 247 Sports does this with their actual recruiter rankings. Because, you know, everybody gets a check. When Jordan Clay commits, Dallas Baker gets credit for that. Okay, and 247 realizes that. Like, that's the guy who's recruiting them. When you look at the top three in this conference, Keenan Hall, number one. Ryan Osborne from Oklahoma State, number two. And then Dallas Baker, number three, up 9 spots this week. Osborne goes down 1 to second. Keenan Hall goes from 4th to 1st. You have two of the best recruiters in this conference. So the next time someone tells you, oh, why would they want to play at Baylor? Dave Aranda is so boring. Of course, they're not going to want to play for him. He doesn't yell. Okay. They have two of the very best. And there's going to be some tough decisions over the next couple of years as Baylor gets better. You know, Jake Spavital is going to have his suitors. Matt Powledge is going to have his suitors. Baylor needs to keep these guys in house. Keenan Hall, Dallas Baker, touchdown maker, and Aaron Hunt. You've got to keep these guys on board. So as much as you see Dave Aranda, and as much as we talk about Dave Aranda, it's these guys getting down in the dirt, man, getting down in the mud and texting these guys every day. That's what Jordan Clay says that at his commitment. You know, through no uncertain terms, everyone's wondering, why is he picking Baylor over Oklahoma? And he literally says to the press, he says, Dallas Baker texts me every day that he's allowed to. Okay? He texts me every day. He texts me Bible verses. He asks about my family. He asks about me, my studies, my personal life. Very rarely do we talk about football. That is like, it doesn't seem like it because we're all texting people every day, but that's blood, sweat, and tears, man. That's putting the work in and being genuine. Not just saying, hey, Jordan, got $800K waiting for you if you come play for us. They're not doing that. Of course, these guys are going to get paid. They're going to get NIL money. Everyone's going to do that. But that's not what it's about. They're keeping in contact with these kids, finding out who they are. And they're going to lose some battles. That's going to happen. And there are going to be kids who go to one of the bigger SEC programs because they get offered a lot of money. That's life. It happens in our everyday lives all the time. But for every one of those, there's going to be one of these kids. There's going to be a Jordan Clay. There's going to be a Jamarion Carlton who says, you know what? I want to go there because I'm wanted there, because I'm a part of their plans, because I'm more than just a defensive end for them. I'm more than just a wide receiver. I'm more than just a spot on their depth chart. And Dave Aranda certainly personifies that. But it's these guys. It's Aaron Hunt. It's Keenan Hall. It's Dallas Baker who are personifying that. And like, lest we forget, it wasn't that long ago that Dallas Baker was not a huge part of this recruiting team. You know, he wasn't one of the big guns on the trail. He's showing a lot of people now. And I think it's maybe the move of the offseason for Dave Aranda and Aaron Hunt too, to put Aaron Hunt as the GM. You know, because that's a different ball game. That's a new position. Aaron Hunt wanted to be a football coach, and he was a football coach. And so to move to GM, where it's like, okay, you're just recruiting, you're just transfer portal, you're not on the field with these guys, you're not teaching them technique, you're doing this. And you gotta get, you know, some of your old former fellow coaches to get out there on the recruiting trail and organize this whole thing. That's not a clear linear career path for these guys. And he's taken it in stride. And he's become one of the best in the conference, if not one of the best in America, with what Baylor's doing right now. So every time you think about the recruit and you think about Dave Aranda, think about these guys. And think about how important they are to this program. A tip of the cap to Keenan Hall, to Dallas Baker, to Aaron Hunt for making it all work. You guys, along with Dave Aranda and along with the players and along with the donors, you guys are turning this program around to the point where something really special is brewing in Waco. That's not the last time I'll say that probably this week. That's not the last time I'll say that this summer. These days, these Jamarion Carltons, these Jordan Clays, these Taz Williams and Cameron Morgans, these Quinn Murphys, these Edward Griffins, those days when we're doing those shows in the middle of the summer and they get only a couple hundred views, those are the building blocks. Because we're going to look back on that in 3 years when Baylor's winning the Big 12 again, hopefully. And we're saying, that's where it started, man. That's where a new era, a new good era of Baylor football started. And it's thanks to all these guys. It's thanks to these recruits who are taking a chance on Baylor, especially last year. Taking a chance on Baylor and recruiting other guys to come in and take a chance on Baylor. New ABBA song just dropped. Take a chance on Baylor. This is the start of something special. And there's so many guys who have a hand in on this. We're going to talk a lot of recruiting this week. Okay, if that's not your thing, if you don't want to hear about the bright future that Baylor football is going to have, this ain't the week for you, man. This ain't the week for you. I had to move crossover Monday to crossover Tuesday because we just needed to get this out. We're going to talk some Big 12 recruiting and crossover show tomorrow. Little crossover Tuesday. Locked on Baylor, Locked on Big 12. Thank you guys so much for making it your first listen today and every day. Get involved in the comment section below about what this has been like, this whirlwind. Who's your favorite recruit? Who do you want to go after next? Who do you need to thank? Whether it's Keenan Hall or Dave Aranda or Quinn Murphy, thank them. Thank them in the comment section below. And we will see you tomorrow after you like and subscribe on your favorite show. Thanks again for making it your first listen today and every day. Locked on Baylor.